Hey, welcome into Juck on Bucks. Appreciate y'all so much. Our intro didn't play, KD.
Oh, I was like, wow, we usually don't jump in like that, but rivalry week, who knows? Maybe just jump headfirst into the rivalry pool.
So it's Monday. Thanks everyone for joining us at a Juck on Bucks Monday. Of course, we've got our man KD. Good morning, brother.
Good morning. Good morning.
What a weekend we had. So much to get into. We got Bucks Indy. It's game week. Huge upsets, salty fan bases, killer mode Ryan Day. Let's start with our conversation Saturday morning in the pregame show, which those of you who aren't watching us, pregame show before all the games on Saturday every weekend over at Menace. So check us out over there. But on the pregame show, we were talking about the game, and you asked me, does this feel like a top 5 matchup to you? And I feel like at the time I said no. And the atmosphere in the stadium certainly felt like it. Props to everybody who was there. That looked amazing. All reports coming out of there is that it was definitely treated like that, right? But I'm torn. Ohio State's played 2 other top 5 matchups this week.
Or this year.
Yeah, sorry. The Buckeyes definitely have gotten better as the season's gone on. But I'm still kind of torn on that team. I just don't know. What did you feel like coming out of there?
I felt good. I felt like we handled that game like championship teams should handle it. Now, I know it's not like a big, like flashy victory. Like there were no like big explosive plays. There wasn't a ton of the deep shots. Not a lot of the wow moments other than that Caleb Downs punt return, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But it felt like how we had seen dominant Nick Saban teams win ball games, right? Like we are like the boa constrictor team. I'm not used to us ever being that. Like we are going to squeeze the life out of you. And you could see it like about what 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. We saw Indiana give up. Like it was like they gave up. And I think that's part of why Kirsten tried to like grind it down and like get them to get a touchdown late in the game. But I feel really good about this team, Juck. Like I feel like this team is so balanced. The defense is so good, like we've expected. The pass rush is finally starting to wake up. And ever since that Oregon game, you could feel there has been an emphasis shift, particularly for Jim Knowles, and maybe Ryan Day giving Jim Knowles more freedom to go get sacks. And you could feel it and see it, man. And I think the crowd responded well. I mean, I feel like we are approaching kind of Death Star status. And it's been really cool to watch, especially when you look around the country. Everybody else, with maybe a slight exception of Oregon, looks so deeply flawed.
There is part of me, and we talked also on that show, like when is the last time that we've seen a Buckeye team take it to a really good team? Just absolutely beat down a really good team. Like we see, really good teams do. National champions do throughout the year. They'll have a game where they just take it to another team that could probably beat everybody else and just whoop them. And it's been forever. It's been forever. So there's part of me that wants to feel like that happened. And then there's another part of me when I look at that team and I say, all right, we're talking about a team that hasn't really shown us against anybody decent this year that they could do that. And the one time they did was against that blue team, that second half, 19 yards.
Right.
And I'm questioning how good they were. Do you think maybe they were a fraudulent top team, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And Ohio State just exposed them a little more than blue did? Or was it really just all Buckeyes? And Indiana is that good, and they're going to show us moving forward that they are that good and did belong there.
No, I think Indiana is that good. I think Indiana is a really good football team. I think this Indiana team was appropriately ranked. They are where they should be. This year, they didn't really show any major flaws, even when they got into a slug fight, against a team like Michigan, who has the chance to kind of stifle anybody with that D line. They did enough in that game. No, I think this is a really good football team. So no, not at all, to be honest. Like I think that I feel the same way about them as I do about a team like Texas. So good football team. And this is just Ohio State kind of imposing their will, being well coached, taking advantage of the talent gap, and again, like suffocating this team. Like now this Indiana team, they didn't allow any explosive plays. Like the one big play they gave up all day was to Trey at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this team kept everything in front of them. And Ohio State, as they should, were just able to march down the field. But I expect Ohio State to march down the field like that against anybody. The one thing that I could say might be fraudulent about this Indiana team is the interior of the offensive line. Other than that, I think they're good everywhere.
So as we look back at that game, there are varying opinions, and I've heard them all over, particularly coming from the national media. People pointing out that if it weren't for the punt, the bad snap on the punt, and the punt return, that was a very close game. That was a one-score game. I don't see it that way, KD. I saw a total ass whooping. I don't see that as a game that was, because when you look at those are two possessions the Ohio State offense didn't get to have. They did get the ball at the 5-yard line and punch it in, but they would have got the ball at the 50. Who's to say they wouldn't have scored there? Let me
push back a little bit. I think because that first half we had 4 red zone trips and only came away with 14 points.
True, it is true. I just don't. When we look at the defense, what they did to Rourke, he dropped back 23 times. He was 8 for 18, 5 sacks, came away with a net, if you take away the lost sack yardage, of 23 yards on 23 dropbacks, 1 yard per dropback. I thought it was total dominance, punt returns or not, whether you want to factor that in or not. I don't think those teams were particularly close on the field. It didn't feel like a blowout to you?
No, it definitely felt like we dominated them. But I also think we dominated a really, really good football team, right? Like that's where I'm at. I think we dominated a very, very good football team, and this should be a massive notch in the belt for Ohio State. I don't think Indiana is quite Penn State caliber, but boy, I think they're pretty close.
Okay, so you see it as a blowout. I see it as a blowout too. I'm just seeing a lot of people push back on that, saying that was a really close game, other than those 2 punt returns. And that's not what I saw. Sometimes as an Ohio State fan, and it's my own team, maybe I can judge that wrong. I don't know. But it just felt to me like that was just all the way through straight dominance after that first possession of that Indiana had, where they took it down in a slow, methodical drive. And after that, it was just a defensive onslaught. And to that defense, bringing in Oregon, USC, Washington, obviously has made the Big Ten more fun. It's made the race for the Big Ten more fun. But I think that Oregon loss, having that being game 6 of the year, was such a blessing, because Ohio State got to go play a team that was really good as them. And usually they don't get to do that. They don't get to do that in the middle of the year. And it really gave them a wake-up call as to what they needed to tweak to get to the ultimate goal here. And the fact that they've done it effectively, they had that powwow, they changed the defense. Kris, the way they're calling the defense looks like a different guy's up there in the booth, man. It doesn't look at all the same. And I think the title of this video talks about some luck. And we've always talked about you need a little luck to win a national championship. I think that having that game in the middle of the season was the first stroke of luck that they have. And I'm going to highlight a couple more.
This defense feels like it's being called like the 2021 defense, or was that 2022 defense, the first year under Jim Knowles when he was here. It feels like it's being called like that, except for we just have by far and away better players on the outside. And I love it.
And experienced. They've all been in this system.
They've all been here. And also, like, Cody Simon on those A-gap blitzes, the way we saw Tommy Eichenberg on the A-gap blitzes the year he was an All-American is incredible to watch, because he's faster than Tommy. Like, his first step is right there, and there's nothing that they can do about it. Oh, the TD to Emeka wasn't an explosive play. Was that an explosive play?
Was it 20? I don't know. It felt like it was inside the red zone to me.
I thought it was inside the red zone. But anyway, back to this defense. They're calling it with that kind of aggression that I think Ryan Day fell in love with Jim Knowles when Jim Knowles was at Oklahoma State. Like, we really hadn't seen that, because after the first year, I think it was kind of like an overcorrection, right? Like the way you lost to Michigan because you brought all the zero blitzes. It's like, why are we blitzing? Why are we blitzing? Why are we blitzing? And so then, like, as a response, you saw Jim Knowles and Ryan Day back off of it entirely.
Yeah.
No blitzing at all. And it feels like because of that Oregon game, we weren't able to do anything, like sack-wise, pressure-wise, and Dylan Gabriel kind of like was able to hit some deep shots. Ohio State and Jim Knowles is like, well, if I'm on the hot seat like people think, I'm going to go out on my own sword. And my own sword is with this group of linebackers, with this group of athletes, with this group of guys outside. We're going to get some sacks and generate some big explosive negative plays.
It is so fun to watch your defense play like that and get quotes like this afterwards.
We couldn't protect the quarterback. We had communication errors in pass pro. Every time we dropped back to pass, something bad happened.
I love it. I love it so much.
Hey, I still love Kris, man. I thought that he handled that post-game press conference like he absolutely should have. Like, no excuses, no blaming the refs, no, he didn't back off of the team that he thought they were, like, very good, but he was like, like he gave a lot of props to the Ohio State players and a lot of props to the Ohio State coaches without whining at all. And I thought he aced that post-game, Juck.
I totally agree. I don't think there was any way you could have handled it any better. And one of the things he was asked about is something that has a lot of people up in arms, and that is Treyon breaks off the late one, slides down at the 1. Ryan Day elects to have Will Howard sneak it in and score the touchdown. Ryan Day spoke about it at the end of the game when asked by our buddy Dylan Davis why he did it.
Some great effort on that play to go turn good into great, and again, a game-changing play.
Over to the right, Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
Ryan, the end of the game offensively for you, that was an interesting sequence. Trey goes down at the 1-yard line. You decide to run 2 plays anyways to score. What was that decision all about, and was there anything to that?
Well, at the end of the game, we're in a 4-minute drill, like you saw in the Penn State game. We call that downtime, which means, once we get the first down in that moment, we feel like the game's probably over. He scored it free and brought it all the way down to the 1-yard line. And I think maybe it triggered like at the last second, oh boy, I got to get down here. So we didn't have to put our defense back on the field. Then we decided to at least milk 45 seconds off the clock. We're on the 1-yard line, and we just felt like we wanted to put an exclamation point on the win by go ahead and sneaking it in.
Killer Ryan Day. Look,
Yeah.
I love it. I think he looked at them, it was 31-7, and they were playing like it was still a game. They were trying to, go down and score. They did. They went for 2. They kicked onside. It's not like he came out throwing. Trey busted it down to the 1, and he punched it in because at that time, it was 31-15.
Right.
That wasn't an accurate reflection of the game. He wanted to put that one more 7 on the board. I liked it. They're crying. They're calling Ohio State classless. Greg Doyle, our old buddy Greg Doyle from the one that creeped out Caitlin
Clark.
Yeah, he's coming out and saying, what did he say? He said, "You're not the Ohio State. You're just a Ohio State." They're all upset, all their beat writers, and I just cannot believe it, man. This is a team that has beaten teams by 2 teams by 50. They scored late against Nebraska, up by 45. I mean, it's crazy.
Which take do you want from me first, Chuck? Do you want my Big Ten cape on, or you want my Ohio State cape on?
Put the Buckeye cape on. God,
dude, I loved it, man. It was like the final, like Ryan Day kind of gets it, heading into Rivalry, even putting it in victory formation. Like even in victory formation, we're gonna score one more time. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a really cool moment. And when a coach gets in front of his whole basketball team, everybody at a basketball school and tells all the fans that like Ohio State sucks too. It's like, okay, bet. Like you've been getting on all these podcasts talking about Google me this, Google me that. Like we are that team. We're this good. We're that good. Like, I mean, you went for 2 at the end of the game. Like, get ready for just big boy football, dog. Like that's what that is. This is like Kris, I think you're a really good coach, but welcome to the class of the elite. Like there is a gap between me and you. Welcome to the class of the elite. Now, Big Ten wise, boy, I was tight. I was tight, dude. And Juck, you know why?
Yeah, I know why. We talked before the game, and
what was the score I said I wanted? What was the score I said I wanted?
You wanted it to be a 2-touchdown gap, and we both said
30-15 is what I wanted.
You did 30-15. So for you guys that aren't aware what we're talking about, this game we decided, the two of us, that we both agreed if this game was Ohio State by 2 touchdowns, which was the initial line, that we didn't feel Indiana should really move off of their ranking, that they should be given the same respect as everybody else was given, all the big boys, when they lost to another top 5 team. They're not going to get knocked down a bunch. And at that point, Indiana came, scored, made it the 2-point conversion. It kind of got to that number where it was like, okay, if they lose, they probably won't move down. and Kris is a big Ten honk. I'm not. We'll get into that discussion a little more later. But
do
yeah,
you know
that
what
was
the importance of 30-15 is?
what is the importance of that specific number?
That is the score of the Texas-Georgia game earlier this year, and Texas was at
That's
home
right.
and lost 30-15, and the national media refused to use that as a knock against their ranking. So I felt like, okay, if it's 30-15 or something close, and Indiana loses 30-15, 31-15, away at Ohio State, you absolutely cannot move them down, even because because I'm a box score watcher. So, and in that game, the Georgia-Texas game, Georgia actually scored late and not Texas. Texas scored all 15 of their points in the third quarter. So I just was like, okay, when I saw Cignetti line up to go for 2, I'm like, oh shoot, he knows the score of that Texas game. That's exactly what he's doing. He knows the score.
Texas, and we'll get into the SEC, but they now have wins against 5 winning teams this year. So their resume getting a little better. But we'll get into that and our rankings and see where Kris moved Indiana down to.
Yes.
Let's get to the game. All right,
game.
buddy. Indiana gone. Time to move on. It's game week. It is the week that produces more anxiety for me than any other week of the year. It can be the best week or the worst week. I mean, it's one of the two. There is no in between. The line has opened it opened at 23.5 on the look ahead line. It's down to 20. We saw them this weekend beat Northwestern 50-6. Worse than Ohio State beat them, but they just played Ohio State, so they're probably a little beaten up going into that game. When you get a team after they played Ohio State, they're not quite 100%. Davis Warren was 26 for 35 for 195 and a touchdown, just one pick. They had 210 yards total rushing. Jalen Marshall, 7 carries for 17 yards for former Mr. Ohio, Jalen Marshall. So preliminary thoughts as we sit here on Monday for Jordan Marshall. Jordan Marshall. For what we're going to see. Gosh, that was stupid. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Jalen, it's funny because I was thinking the same thing, but Jalen is like I obviously cut up the return from Jalen Marshall over the weekend too, because against Indiana the week before, all that.
So what are we thinking? Preliminary thoughts on Monday for the game.
I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited because this Ohio State team is feeling like the tough body punching team. The run game's figured it out. And I heard Will Howard's quotes after the game, and immediately I'm like, okay, we get it. We're back. We're back. A Philly kid that gets it. He referenced he wants to do this for not only all the fans of Ohio State, the state of Ohio, but also for all the guys that are going to come back to go beat them. So I feel really, really good. I do feel like in the first half, this game might be a little bit of a game, which I'm not mad at, but I'm expecting this team to finally right all their wrongs. And hopefully Ryan Day scores 100.
When I heard Will Howard after the game, it just took me back to last year and the difference between having a quarterback lead your team who, it's a leadership position, and a guy like that who is look, I've seen it from the outside. Now I'm part of it. I can't wait. I want it so bad for these guys, my buddies, my boys that have been here that came back for this. When you got a guy like that leading the way, who is now literally breaking CJ Stroud records. I mean, this dude is so awesome. I love him. Even if he wasn't as good as he is, I would love him. Just the way, and we knew he would be like this. We knew this was
personality. A+ personality.
We knew it, but it's just it's been fantastic to watch. I think the Buckeyes may struggle running the ball here. I think they may struggle running the ball. When we looked at the way the offensive line performed, they were pretty good in pass pro against Indiana. They weren't great in the run game. Run game was not clicking good. Yards per carry weren't great until Trey busted that long one. And obviously we know that Michigan front really good. So I think they may have some issues running the ball. But with Will Howard, I feel really confident that the offense is going to be moving just fine.
Will Johnson's quiet quitting.
That was next. We have known, I think, since maybe the third game he sat out,
Yeah.
that this was most likely the case. It certainly seems clear at this point, and he's not going to be playing in the game. For somebody I saw said it in the comments. How would you feel if an Ohio State player did this? If it was a guy in that circumstance?
I would hate it. I mean, you would think that, like, as Will Johnson, he was never going to get blamed if they lost to Ohio State this year at all. And so what it really looks like is like giving up on your team and like also like kind of ducking a matchup with Jeremiah Smith is kind of what it feels like. Because that's what we all wanted to see, right? We all wanted to see like the guy who's probably going to go down as the most talented Ohio State receiver ever in most people's eyes against a guy who is likely the most talented corner in the history of not the history of Michigan, but in recent modern day Michigan times, right? Like that's what we wanted to see. And he was, it's funny because he was a game time decision so many times. Yeah. And it just feels like he just shut it down to go to the pros. Like, I guess I'm not mad at him, but I guess I'm mad that we're being robbed of the matchup, Jeremiah Smith versus Will Johnson.
I hate it as a college football fan. I hate that this, the more players like Will do that, the more we're going to see kids do this. It's already been done. Once the public gets over a couple people doing it, then it becomes just standard, just like sitting out bowl games slowly. When that first started, that was a big deal. And then a couple years later, we just expected. And now it's going to lead to a road where we just expect if a team's around 500, your best players that are going to be going to the league are just going to shut it down. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I can't imagine one of Ryan Day's players doing it. I just can't.
I see people in the chat saying this is what JSN did. This is not at all what JSN did. JSN had the bad hamstring injury against Notre Dame, limped off, obviously was very hurt, came back 3 games later against doctor's wishes and played more than he should have, and then re-injured it really badly and was struggling to run, and then tried to get healthy by the end of the year to play in the bowl game, against Georgia. Like, he tried multiple times to give it a go. This was not a JSN thing at all.
Totally agree, man. I can't see this is not Ohio State's culture. This wouldn't happen at Ohio State.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
But talking about the luck and that it takes luck to win a national championship, I think that that them being so poor this year is another stroke of luck. Any way you slice it. Obviously, you had the bad luck with the offensive line, but having Oregon in the middle of the season, having your rival not be so good at the end of the year, I'm seeing preliminarily, I'm going to say Bucks by 17. That's kind of what I think. And I'm with you. I think this will probably be a tight one in the first half.
Yeah, I think so too. I think at some point, though, I'm expecting like Jim Knowles to really dial things up. I don't think Michigan scores in the second half. So I would be surprised if this game was 10-14 going into halftime. And then we see Michigan maybe get a field goal or 2 in the second half. But if this game starts to get broken open, I'm expecting Ryan Day to not take his foot off the gas the entire time. Like, I felt like there were times in this Indiana game where he kind of eased off a little bit until Cincinnati kind of went for 2, and then it was like, all right, like we'll go get one more. I'm not expecting that at all. I don't think Ryan Day likes Michigan. I think Michigan represents a piece of Ryan Day's life that he would like to put behind him, and I think anything he can do to blast that team into the ether and leave a lasting impact, I think he'll take. So I'm expecting the most aggressive Ryan Day we've seen at Ohio State ever. More aggressive than even the Oregon version. I mean, excuse me, even the Georgia version.
I can't wait to see his face and his demeanor. This Ohio State team is a tough team, really. He doesn't need to say it this time. This really is a tough Ohio State team. They're playing tough, and I can't wait to see his demeanor up there. It's going to be interesting. Everything that he's dealt with, and we heard Jack Sawyer talking about it after the game, everything he and his family have dealt with, and Jack sounded like he was a little bit irritated by that. But these dudes are out for blood. Yeah. I certainly hope that they get what's coming to them. But Johnny brought up an interesting point that Zach actually said on, I think it was Friday's show. Would you rather beat a good Michigan team or a bad Michigan team? Don't you want them to be good? Don't you want them to be good so that the win feels better? And there have been times where I've kind of wavered on this throughout my life, where there was a time where Ohio State, when it was just expected at the end of the year, we were going to win that game no matter what, where it started to feel right. Most of your, formative years,
right.
It started to feel to me like, gosh, man, I wish they were a little more competitive. They're kind of ruining how exciting this week usually is for me. And then they got good, and I quickly recognized, wait a minute, I forgot what they were like when they were good.
Yeah.
And I quickly said, no, I'd rather them be bad. I want nothing good for them ever. And that's kind of how I feel. How about you?
That's how I feel too. And it's funny because like Juck, as wild as this may seem, like so I've been watching Ohio State pretty closely since Troy Smith, because obviously like Troy Smith being from Cleveland, like obviously us being from Akron, like all the talk and the chatter about him. But even a little bit before that, so in 2006 was the first time like I sat down and watched like wire to wire an Ohio State Michigan game without like having to go play or whatever. But I watched that game in 2006, and I never felt like we were going to lose at all the entire game. And my uncle was nervous. I was not nervous at all. And at that point, I loved Ohio State. And like from that moment on, in my head, we were never going to lose to those guys ever. Even the year when we lost, when Luke Fickell was there, I felt like I walked away like, oh, we were the better team. Braxton missed the deep ball, and we lost the game because of it. But this was the worst Ohio State team that I'll ever have to see in my entire lifetime, against probably one of the better Michigan teams I'll ever see in my lifetime. And so when they lost in 2021 with CJ Stroud, that one really messed me up. And I think that I enjoy when Michigan's down, but for the sake of where Ohio State's at currently, I do want Ryan Day to get his shot against a good Michigan team, because that's the only way I think he cleanses everything. Like, I will give him his flowers for beating this Michigan team, but I don't think national media will. I think for a large part of the Ohio State fan base as well, they want to see Ryan Day beat a good Michigan team. Not every year, but at least show that you've got it in you. Because even when Urban Meyer was here, it wasn't a good Michigan team every year, but there were some really good Michigan teams that he wouldn't beat. And so it's not like the whole Urban Meyer era was him beating up on bad Michigan teams. There were some very, very good teams. He ended some very, very good Michigan teams' hopes at making a playoff. He ended Michigan teams' hopes that had first rounders everywhere. I mean, shoot, at one point it was number 3 versus number 4, Michigan, Ohio State, and he beat them. And within the Ohio State scope, it's like, yeah, look, like Urban Meyer, no matter who it is, will beat that really good team. So
yeah, no, I'm with you there. I don't like the spin that all Urban did was beat up on bad Michigan teams. We've heard that quite a bit.
It's so incorrect. It's so incorrect.
Not right. It's not right. There were some really, really big games in his tenure, but I'm with you that I do think Ryan Day.
Some big games with some 5 stars. People forget they had a 5-star quarterback, 2 5-star defensive linemen. Like they had a whole offensive lineman that ended up being pros. Like they had Jabril Peppers, another 5-star. A guy who
Rashawn Gary. There is a narrative that they don't ever get big players. I don't know how it's become a thing.
I think it was that 2017 Michigan team. They had the same talent composite or a little better than last year's Michigan team. So I always tell people, like, that Michigan team was Donovan Peoples-Jones, another 5-star. Like, they had 5 stars all over that field. And for some reason, because of Jim Harbaugh, because whoever, it's remembered as a bad team. That team was a good football team, man. Like, Urban Meyer beat really good Michigan teams. I don't care what anybody says.
Now, I am seeing a lot of them say that because of the Bryce Underwood news, because of the Larry Ellison money commitment, because of the future of NIL and how excited they are about that, the dominoes that are going to fall from the Bryce Underwood recruitment or commitment, that they don't really care how this season ends. They don't care about this version of the game. I'm not going for it, KD. I'm not going for it. You don't get to have that. You don't get to play that game. You care.
You absolutely care. They do not get to get away with that. They care about this game. I've already got a full bookmark folder of Michigan fans saying that they're going to beat us for the 4th straight year. And I got one as recent as like 3 days ago too. So yes, they absolutely care about this game. Do not let them fool you. And they got to pay for all the junk they've been talking for the last year. They have to pay for it. And now that they're clean, now that the sport's cleaned up a little bit, now that the cheaters are gone, we're going to see what that really looks like. And also, like, Kyle McCord's gone. Like, it's funny because I always give them grief because the best Michigan team ever struggled against the Kyle McCord Ohio State team. Think about that. Like,
Yeah.
we lost. They beat us by 6 points. Kyle McCord threw them a touchdown, essentially. So congrats. The best Michigan team of all time struggled with the Kyle McCord Ohio State team.
Too funny. We are going to get to our national whip around in a second and go through the playoff outlook and then our rankings. But first, we've got this brought up in the chat about 5 times. KD, what do you got to add to that?
There's communication. I don't know if you have anything to add. There's communication there. And there is, from a couple NIL people I know, there is some optimism, some eyebrows being raised, given the recent change in the defense, that there might be at least some listening going on, and we'll see if he ends up at the game on Saturday. And
that is your update on Justin Hill, who is, of course, an Alabama commit from Ohio, and a guy that the Buckeyes really, really wanted, went all in on. And
think Oklahoma.
There's some potential. There was not any potential a couple of weeks ago, and now all of a sudden, just like David Sanders, who was on campus all weekend to Monday, there's some potential, and a lot of people feel like that it's moving in the right direction. Tennessee people feel like it's moving in the wrong direction. They're kind of shook. And I talked to one of the guys who has gone through this with him, and he said that he feels way more comfortable about our shots for him now than he did during their OV period. So I'm feeling pretty good about that, man. Feeling pretty good.
I was told point blank, we're getting Sanders, ... So take that for what it's worth. I'm trying not to go back. I'm trying not to fall in, Juck. I'm close though.
I know. Like, I'm not going to let this kid break my heart twice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to let it happen.
It reminds me of Caleb Downs a little bit. Do you remember when he try to make the secret trip up to Ohio State for the Ohio State Michigan game, and it was like,
yeah.
And then he ended up not coming. Then he came later. But Tennessee people are kind of, like my guy DG said, putting that white flag up a little bit. I'm just trying not to fall for it, Juck. I'm trying not to.
I know. All right, buddy, let's whip around nationally, because it was just a wild weekend in college football. We're going to talk about our rankings. Let's start in the Big 12, where Kansas beats Colorado 37-21. All Colorado had to do was beat Kansas and beat a really bad Oklahoma State team, and they were in the Big 12 championship on their way to the playoffs potentially, and that defense fell apart at Arrowhead Stadium, home of the Chiefs. Cool place for a game between the two of them. But Kansas's running back, Devin Neal, the real deal. This dude, 287 total yards from scrimmage, 4 touchdowns, 520 yards of offense from Kansas. Travis Hunter also has another big game, 8 catches, 125, and 2 scores in his Heisman campaign, which he's going to win that sucker easily, it looks at this point. But Kansas does it again. We lost. We picked Colorado in our picks, so we both lost. But it's looking like now that Arizona State and Iowa State, should they both win next week, are going to be the teams that play for the Big 12 championship with a spot in the playoffs. And I just cannot believe that in a season where we came in the Big 12, the 4 favorites to win that conference were Utah, Kansas State, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. And as we finish, it's BYU, Arizona State, Colorado, and like what in the world? This conference is insane.
Dude,
Anybody can win this
I picked
thing
Arizona
anywhere.
to win the conference for the year, so I was dead wrong.
Yeah, I picked Kansas. And Kansas, they look now like they could beat anybody in the country at some time. But wow, what a crazy conference. And of course, we had the craziest finish of the week at Arizona State, Sun Devil Stadium, where you and I we both picked the Sun Devils. We won that pick, but the finish was insane. If anybody hasn't seen it, Arizona State was up by 5 at the 5-yard line going in with about 1:30, and they tried to run out the clock, by just running their quarterback, kind of running him around, scrambling, and then taking the sack. And he ends up all the way back at the 50.
Right.
And then the very last play, 4th down, he tries to throw the ball. There's like 6 seconds. So by the time it lands, the clock will be expired. Only when it landed, the clock wasn't expired. There was 1 second left, but the fans had already stormed the field. And this is a video of the referees telling the head coach, Kenny Dillingham, that there is in fact 1 second and everybody's got to get the hell off the field. So BYU gets a shot at a Hail Mary from the 50. Bro, this looks like it's about to be a big that is the craziest thing I've ever seen at the end of a football game.
Bro, he is so funny, dude. I love him. The eyes got so huge.
I'm stunned that he didn't get a flag on that, dude. I am stunned they did not penalize him for that. Number one, they didn't get penalized for it took him 15 minutes to get everybody off the field, guys. 15 minutes.
Chuck, did you see they were trying to put the goalpost back up?
Yeah, so they lowered the goalpost. So they got the lowerable goalpost.
Yeah.
Craziest ending I've ever seen. It took 15 minutes, and then BYU completes it down to the 2. Could you imagine if they would have scored? I could not believe it, dude. It was the wildest game ever.
That one took so many years off Dillingham's life, dude. Shout out to him, man. Only 34 years old, doing a good job.
Yeah, and boy, his age shows sometimes. But yes, doing a great job. Got his team in position to potentially make the playoffs. A team that at the beginning of the year, we're talking about the sanctions and hopefully he can win 4 games and keep his job. They've obviously been down big from the sanctions for their recruiting during the COVID period. Same thing that Blue got popped for. They've been dealing with some big sanctions. Theirs were a little more extensive. What they did was a little more extensive. But all right, to the ACC, and this won't take long, as Miami kills Wake. Cam Ward breaks my childhood hero, Bernie Kosar's passing record. 3,642 yards set by Bernie Kosar. Cam Ward breaks that, and there's been a whole hell of a lot of good quarterbacks come through the U. That's pretty impressive, man.
No, that is impressive, man. Cam Ward's real deal, and he's kind of live up to what everybody thought he had the potential to be. Maybe even smash that. I mean, he's been really good, really fun to watch. Put a couple throws on tape, they're like, whoa. I mean, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. Obviously, like us here in Ohio, have a certain affinity for Bernie Kosar. Even myself, even though I'm not a Browns fan. But no, Miami, they probably look like maybe the best team in the ACC. I guess who is your ACC Big Three?
SMU, Clemson. SMU wins. They beat Virginia 33-7. Kevin Jennings, our guy, killing it. We're driving a bus for Kevin Jennings.
That's baby Cam Ward. That's the same thing. Like, he looks just like the younger version of Cam Ward when Cam Ward was at Washington State. He looks just like that.
We are on a collision course between those two teams. Should they both win next week in the ACC championship, they will both be 11-1. The question is, does the loser still have a shot? Because we thought this was only going to be a 1-bid league, but now potentially, as SMU has now racked up their 5th win against a winning team, or their 5th win against a winning team, their resume is looking pretty good. Only a 3-point loss to BYU, a very good team this year. Should they lose that game and it be close, if SMU is the loser, I think the resume a little better than Miami. There might be a chance there to get 2. But Kris, what about Clemson? Clemson is potentially going to finish the year with a win against South Carolina. That's a good win to end the year on. That would leave them at 2 wins, 1 to ranked Louisville, 1 to Georgia, another playoff team. And let's keep in mind, they scheduled Georgia out of conference. And we are trying to encourage teams to schedule those out of conference games. Does Clemson have a shot?
I think they should. I don't know if their name brand damage is too much as is too damaged to get there though. I like Clemson. I think they're good, not great. I think they're good on both lines of scrimmage, which I think is really important. Cade Klubnik, you never know what you're going to get. He is the ultimate mystery box quarterback, but he's been in large part pretty good this year. I don't know how to feel about Clemson, honestly. Like even like a playoff version of Clemson, I don't know how they line up against other teams. So how do you feel about Clemson?
I don't know, but I'm at the point I think where we're either Clemson or SMU. If they lose to Miami, I'm not sure they will, but if they do, that I do think that the ACC is going to get 2. I think they are.
2 for the
Whether
ACC.
it's one of those 2, I'm starting to lean towards that, particularly with
Kevin Jennings hasn't lost a game as a starting quarterback.
The dude's the real deal. He's the real deal. All right, on to the Big Ten. Start off with the smaller games. Illinois, they beat Rutgers. That is their 8th win on the year. So going for 9 wins next week, pretty damn impressive for Burt Bielema. You carry the Big Ten flag. They have invested in their coach, in new facilities, in the transfer portal this year. Illinois is trying to come up. And yes, they're trying to come up. They're trying to be a football school. Potentially getting 9 wins is proof of concept. It's huge. It's huge for the Big Ten. I don't think anybody else is talking about it, but that's a big deal. If you rep the Big Ten, Illinois investing and all that's a good thing.
No, Illinois is a good team, a tough team to beat, and they should absolutely be ranked between 17 and 21. That's how good they are. And Brad Bielema continues to. This program gets better and better and better, and they are one of the reasons why the Big Ten is tough, because teams like them can beat you any given week. They run the ball really well. They probably have a top 9 offensive line in the country, and they do not try to deviate from their identity at all. And so every game they're going to be a tough out, and Brett Bielema deserves all the flowers in the world. And I'm glad that Illinois was patient with him and let him kind of get here. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is they're going to be a 9-win team potentially, and then potentially a 10-win team if they win a bowl game. And if I would have told you before the year, if I would have told a casual before the year, Illinois got a chance to win 10 games, you'd be like, no, not a chance, not at all. But here we are as the Big Ten continues to put together solid field of teams. I mean, they're a team that's absolutely better than Arkansas. They absolutely are kind of that caliber, and probably significantly better. They're better than Vandy, who's a lot of teams' best win. So they're better than Oklahoma, who just beat the brakes off of Bama. So I'm a big Illinois fan. And I'm carrying the flag for the Big Ten since no one else will.
All right, Wisconsin, Nebraska, the only game on the docket in the 10 games we picked that you and I were on opposite sides of. We picked the same games, Wisconsin and Nebraska. I had Nebraska, you had Wisconsin. Nebraska absolutely destroyed Wisconsin, and they get bowl eligible for the first time in forever. Matt Rule did it, man. He broke the streak. They're all so happy. I'm happy for them. Talk about another program that has invested heavily. Their new facility, if anybody likes looking at those facility little walkthroughs, oh my gosh, this thing's ridiculous at Nebraska. They're pumping money into NIL. Their recruiting class this year is the best it's been in a long, long time. And now they're going to be bowl eligible. They got Dana Holgerson calling plays. Things are looking up at Nebraska. Wisconsin, not so much.
And Dana Holgerson, you know how many times they dropped back with Dylan Raiola?
How many?
40 times. They lined up and they said, we're gonna spray this ball literally everywhere, and they let Dylan take shots early. And 28 for 38, 293, 1 touchdown. It isn't crazy, but just being able to spread the ball out and spread the field out, it opened up their run game as well. Because I mean, what's the idea of spread offenses? People think it's to throw the football. No, it's to get as many defenders outside of that box as possible. And if you've got the threat of pushing the ball down the field, and Dana's going to do that. Like that's kind of how that's Dana's MO. And they also ran for 113 on 16 carries.
Nice. They got some good
very
backs,
efficient, very efficient. And I was worried a little bit because Mike Tressel is a guy that defensively they do a pretty good job. I mean, shoot, they did a pretty good job against Oregon the week before. So you would think, like there's some confidence brewing here. And if they did a good job against Dylan Gabriel, they should do a good job against Dylan Raiola. But the offense, I mean, changed to my eye. I'm curious to ask Zach about it in week 2 with Dana Holgorsen.
Penn State, bro. Penn State heads up to Minnesota. A lot of people thought this might be a tight one. This might be a spot. And it turned out they were right. Penn State ekes out a 26-25 win. PJ Fleck, Minnesota head coach, has the ball down at the 10, and he elects to kick a field goal to cut it to 1 point with I think under 4 minutes left. That's one of those decisions where if you're an underdog, you're not really playing for anything. They're already bowl eligible. They got a chance to knock off a top team in Penn State. That's a chicken shit move, man. I couldn't get behind it. Sure enough, he never gets the ball back as Penn State, and kudos to James Franklin, big stones, goes for it on 4th down 2 times on the drive to not give the ball back to them. And Penn State ekes it out. I don't think that's the type of win that should be scoffed at because it's, quote, Minnesota. Minnesota's a 7-win team.
Yep.
And I think that's a pretty damn solid win. That is one of those wins, though, that the Big Ten teams, and I'll give you this because you carry the Big Ten flag, the Big Ten gets knocked on that. And if that was in the SEC, it would not be viewed the same way.
It's like it's a hard fought, our league is so deep. A couple things here. Flowers to PJ Fleck for understanding the assignment. Your job is not to win that game, big dog. Your job is not to win that game. Call your athletic director, but the timeout before you make your 4th down decision. Say, hey, if I kick this field goal and we lose this game, is my job safe? Yes, it absolutely is, because the more teams the Big Ten gets into the playoff, the more money that is for every university. That check is bigger. So PJ Fleck understood the assignment and didn't want to take his bald brethren down. And so shout out to him for getting it, because James Franklin tried to do what James Franklin hadn't done in a couple years, lose one of these games. Like, this had the feel of a game he was going to lose the whole way through.
It did.
And I'm thankful they didn't, because this had a chance to be a really, really bad day for the Big Ten. And when Penn State pulled that out, it pivoted and became a really bad day for the SEC. Because usually, Juck, these days are reversed.
Yes, the Big Ten ends up screwing themselves.
Exactly. And this time, the SEC ended up screwing themselves. And the Big Ten
sure did. Let's get into it. We'll start with the one that was kind of inconsequential. LSU beats Vandy 24-17. The fans were cheering Fire Kelly. And I don't mean a lot of times when people say that, they mean little pocket. I mean like sections of Death Valley were cheering Fire Kelly.
Yep.
In year 3, dude, he's got a big year on his hands next year. And when we look at Notre Dame and him leaving Notre Dame to go increase his chances to win a national championship at LSU, he looks pretty damn far away.
It's crazy because, like, we talk about this show is about like how much luck is involved. Brian Kelly is a better coach than Ed Orgeron. Far better coach.
Hell
like,
yes.
I don't think it's even close.
No.
And Ed Orgeron, I don't know if he kissed a leprechaun or what, randomly got super lucky, landed Joe Burrow. Justin Jefferson is a 3-star who nobody wanted, and then got Jamar Chase, and then went on a crazy, crazy run to win the title, and they got to avoid Ohio State, who really probably had the formula to at least give them more of a fight than Clemson. Like, he got all that luck in 1 year, and I feel like that used up all the luck at LSU for the next decade.
Hey,
because Brian's a better coach than Ed.
Very good coach. He is. I can't stand the guy, but he's a really good coach.
Can't stand him, but it's wild how the luck thing goes.
So, of the games of consequence, Texas A&M, we both picked Auburn straight up. This game goes to 4 overtimes. Auburn beats A&M, and A&M somehow still alive. And we'll give that breakdown in a minute of how the SEC championship's going to look out. But first, Ole Miss. You were driving the bus for Ole Miss. They were your horse. Obviously, when we talk about this team, it's got an incredible amount of talent. Their best game can beat anybody in the country, no doubt about it. They did not play it in the swamp and lost 24-17. Jackson Dart throwing a couple late picks. No good, man. You got a roster they have won the transfer portal crown 2 of the last 3 years. They were all in on this year, all in. and lost their third game. It's unacceptable. Lane Kiffin's not elite. And I couldn't be more disappointed in you for believing in Lane.
That was a good spin at the end. Are you a baseball fan, Juck?
No.
Well, this is for the Cleveland baseball fans. Ole Miss is John Kenzie Noel. He's the player on the Guardians that when he's hitting, he's the best hitter on the team. He had the crazy home run against the Yankees. Like, all he does is hit tanks. But then when he's not hitting, sometimes he'll go 0 for 5 with just 5 strikeouts. And that's what this Ole Miss team feels like. Like, when they are on, boy, are they really on. And I'm not just talking about one side of the ball. Because Alabama, like, if Jalen Milroe's on, they're on everywhere. Like, if Ole Miss is on, they've got the best D-line in the country. They got the best receiver in the country. And they've got the best quarterback in the country. But if one of those things isn't on, it feels like the whole team just shuts down. Like, it really, really looks bad. And they had no business losing to Florida, I think. But Lane Kiffin, there was a moment, I believe, early in the fourth quarter, Juck. It's a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. They're about to go in and score. They're down by 3 points. They decide to go for it. They pull Jackson Dart off the field to go for it on 4th and short. And I'm watching my TV, and like, I've been somebody who's criticized Lane Kiffin for losing big games, but never sat down and assessed why he lost these games. And in that moment, it hit me. Jackson Dart is one of the 5 most important, most impressive players in America. And you want to direct snap the ball to somebody else while Jackson Dart, 6'3", 235, is on the bench.
Game on the line. Yeah. How do you defend it?
You can't. Again, it's not like it's a Julian Sand stature quarterback back there. Like, Jackson Dart is 6'3". If you're going to run quarterback power, run to the quarterback who also, could throw it. Like,
for sure.
Make Florida think. As soon as they saw Jackson Dart was on the sideline and they're in shotgun, everybody up in the line of scrimmage. And I was like, that is why Lane Kiffin has these games every year. And this was the best Ole Miss team he had ever fielded. And they lost to a Florida team with a true freshman quarterback who had an abysmal start to the year.
When we look at Ole Miss, though, and we talk about their resume, some big wins, when we talk about their losses, a bad loss to Kentucky, but a very close game, then this loss, 7 points to Florida. Florida's going to end up winning 7 games now.
Yeah. They're a top 20 team. They're a top 20 team to me, at least. Florida.
3 very close losses. When we look at Alabama, this is a 3-loss team that now just got dusted by Oklahoma. This Oklahoma team that we have clowned all year, Alabama went in and scored 3 points. Jalen Milroe, 164 yards through the air, 7 yards on the ground, 15 rushes for 7 yards. He accounted for 41 plays with the ball in his hands, 171 total yards. I couldn't believe it. We're talking about a guy who I think is the most unstoppable player in the country when he's on. We're talking about a team whose best can beat anybody's best, for sure. Like, when they're playing their best, they're scary, dude. They're the team I feared the most. They're the team I did not want to match up with the most. I don't want to say that. That sounds cowardly. They're the team I thought Ohio State would have the hardest matchup against.
You're like mobile quarterback.
Yeah, right. And he's the epitome of it. This, again, these two teams getting knocked out, I think, is another stroke of luck, because you got two teams who have the horses. I think to beat Ohio State, you need a prerequisite level of talent. These two teams have it. They're going to be out of that playoff field most likely. And two teams are going to be in the playoff field that do not have the prerequisite level of talent that can beat Ohio State. So I think right there, that's a little lucky stroke right there.
I feared Ole Miss a little bit more than I feared Alabama, or I just wanted to avoid them because Ole Miss's D-line coming into this week had 44 sacks in the year. For comparison, like Georgia going into the year had 20, or going into this week at 26. So like, we're talking about like a truly, ridiculous, D-line, but also like not having to face Ryan Williams, who honestly had the perfect mix of everything you want to beat Denzel Burke is nice. Like it's just nice knowing that. And I agree with you. Like the prerequisite amount of talent and like the we've been here before kind of thing. Like that's what Alabama
Right.
has that a lot of people don't like, that a lot of people take for granted. Like they've got we've got guys that have been here, and we also have championship expectations. So like we're looking at you like we're supposed to be hosting the trophy. You're not. And I think that kind of psyche matters. So no, I'm really relieved because again, like in the Big Ten, like usually we have this kind of week where 2 of our guys get eliminated, but no, not this year. And they're lucky it's a 14 playoff, dog, or not a 14 playoff, because they'd be in real danger of being left out entirely.
That would be really funny. All right. Now, the SEC championship game is going to be for sure Georgia and the winner of Texas A&M next week. That game now effectively is a playoff game in the fact that A&M needs to win that and the conference championship to get in my opinion. Texas, they could still potentially get in if they don't win the conference championship game, but they don't want to push it.
I think if they win this week, they're in.
I think so too. But the winner of that going to play Georgia. Georgia looking pretty good as they climb up the ranks. And now I think it's time we should pull up our rankings, KD, and show everybody how we came out with our top 12. And we will pull yours up first and walk us through your top 12.
It took me an hour to do this. Me and Juck.
90 minutes for me. I had a hard time.
I bounced around a lot of things. Obviously, like the easiest 3 for me, grouping of 3, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. Shout out to the Big Ten. I mean, I think that one was pretty easy. Notre Dame I struggle with a little bit, but they look so dominant this weekend that I'm willing to concede the mulligan. Like that's their, like the NIU is their Virginia Tech, I guess is what I'll call it. And them winning in dominating fashion, I had to put them at 4. Indiana at 5 because Indiana did exactly what they were supposed to do. The same way Texas lost to Georgia, Indiana lost to Ohio State at Ohio State. I think Ohio State's better than Indiana. Indiana has blown several teams out, never really looked like they were in a real dogfight outside of Michigan, and I really think they are truly deserving of the number 5 team. So I have no issues moving them there. And Texas at 6. Texas does not pass Indiana because Texas has the worst loss, I think, and they have the same level win. Now, I did believe that Texas should be ahead of schools like SMU, Georgia, and Miami because I think that Florida win they had last week looks a lot better now, given the fact that I think, and I've said to you, that Florida is likely a top 20 team, power-rated team with DJ Lagway healthy. SMU at 7, they haven't lost a game with their starting quarterback. They've got the ranked wins. Like I can appreciate what they've done over there, and I think coaching matters, and I'm a huge Rhett Lashley fan. And because of that, I've bumped them. At number 8, I've got Georgia because I never know what I'm going to get with Georgia because their quarterback has a ton of downside, but not a ton of upside. I think the best version of Carson Beck is someone who throws for 250 a game, but the worst version of Carson Beck is someone that throws 3 or 4 interceptions. I flip-flopped them in Miami a good amount, but I do think the Georgia win over Texas is why I went Georgia 8, Miami 9. The reason I put Miami ahead of Tennessee is really simple. I think if they played on a neutral site today, I think I might pick Miami. And that's just kind of where I'm at. And the Tennessee loss to Arkansas is one that kind of bugs me a little bit. And then I struggled with BYU as well because BYU had the close loss to Oregon, which I'm almost counting as a win for a school like that. But down the stretch, they've played in a lot more tighter games than I would have liked. If you're the group of 5 team, I would like to see you blow some teams out. And I can see Ashton Genty's legs being really worn down and not quite getting there. And then I go Arizona State. Kenny, hey, look, they beat BYU, who was a top 10 team a couple weeks ago, a top 15 team going into this week. And they've quietly put together a really good year. They got the kid from Michigan State playing quarterback over there, and it feels like he's unlocked. And I think that they absolutely deserve to be 12, given the Colorado loss over the weekend as well. So that's my top 12. I feel really good in it. We have not compared top. I haven't seen. Oh no, I have seen yours, but I didn't see yours before I made mine.
No, you did not. We both made them independently.
Yep.
And now we will pull up mine and see the difference here. Number 1, the glaring difference is the Indiana ranking. I dropped Indiana down considerably. I think that when you look at their resume now, they've only played one team with a winning record, and that's Ohio State. And in that one game against a team with a winning record, they got destroyed. Well, technically, Michigan is 6-5 at this point, but they'll finish the season without a winning record.
Wait, and Nebraska, right?
I'm sorry, Nebraska too, and I guess Washington's 6-5. Those three are six. Those three teams are 6-5 right now.
Right.
They're 6-5 teams. But when we look at these other teams ahead of them, they've all played teams that, like Texas, for instance, now has wins against 5 teams with a winning record. Indiana, just a couple. And I feel like that game maybe somewhat exposed some weaknesses because they've never shown me, again, against Michigan, a team with a good defense, and against Ohio State, they've not shown me yet that offense can do anything like they do against other opponents against a good defense. And we've not seen it. So I just and I hope for them that in the playoffs they can show us that. I just don't see it yet. But starting from the top, obviously, I feel like at number 3 we can start Texas over Notre Dame, who Notre Dame's won 9 in a row, and they are beating the brakes off people. They look like a different team. Mm-hmm. But Texas, again, with wins against 5 teams that now have a winning record, and Notre Dame not quite there. I think they're at 4. They're pretty even resumes to me. I give Texas the slight nod just for, and again, I'm a recruiting guy. I know that they're much more talented, not a ton more, but I just give them the nod a little bit. Georgia comes in after that. I got Georgia over Penn State because of the Penn State tight win against Minnesota. These two, honestly, I could go either way. Georgia has the 3 really big wins against huge teams, but obviously the 2 losses, which now those losses are 3 lost teams in Bama and Ole Miss. They both got 3 losses, so that dings them a little bit more. But again, I got no problem if someone flops them 5-6, whatever. A lot of these are like that. Moving on down to Miami over Indiana. I think that Miami has kind of turned it around from that little mid-season lull where they were very tight against Virginia Tech and tight against Cal. Some people consider that Virginia Tech game a loss because of that penalty at the end. I don't. I think it was the right call. But Indiana, slightly less impressive than Miami. Tennessee over SMU, another one I struggle with. I mean, kind of go down with these tiers, or just little tiers of these 2 teams that they're even Steven in every way. But 11 is where maybe this gets a little different for Moses. I've got Clemson sneaking in there at 11. When I look at this resume and when I look at what I've always said, I want to reward teams that schedule these out-of-conference big games so that they continue to schedule these out-of-conference big games and realize that, yes, you're going to get dinged if you lose and get the brakes beat off you like they did, but you're not going to get dinged, 100% because you went and you tried and you entertained college football and you did what you were supposed to do. And Georgia, of course, when we talk about Georgia, they get rewarded as well for scheduling that game too. They didn't need to do that. They had the number 1 schedule probably without that Clemson game. And they also scheduled Georgia Tech to finish the season. So, props to them for their scheduling efforts. And then Ole Miss at number 12.
Wait, Juck, that's a rivalry game. That game will always get scheduled. I don't want to give their scheduling department props for that.
Okay, right. But it is an out-of-conference game.
It's definitely an extra game, an extra non-conference game.
Yeah. And Georgia Tech this year, not a joke, man. They've won 7 games. Yeah.
So here we go. Last time Ohio State won the title, they had a punt return against Indiana the week before Michigan. And then the following week, Georgia Tech beat Georgia. And then Ohio State ended up going on to win the title. So that was like one of those weird situations. So Georgia Tech was good last time Ohio State won a natty. Just throwing that out there.
Interesting. Okay, I like it. Mm-hmm. And then I've got Ole Miss at 12, and I really was between them or Boise. Boise's last 3 games, 2 of those games they've played against a 2-win team and a 3-win team, and they won by a touchdown or less in both of those games. Their game Saturday, they look like they're petering out. They just don't look like the team that they were in the middle of the season, and they are obviously at the 12 spot. They would get in anyway in my ranking, but I'm just this is who I would have next. Ole Miss, this is a team that I feel of the 3 lost teams is the one that is best positioned. Their resume is the best because their loss has just been, they've been 1 possession games here or there. The LSU loss They were leading the whole game at Death Valley at night. LSU throws a touchdown pass in overtime to win the game. Ole Miss led the whole game, and that it's tough. It is what it is, though. But I still have them as the best of those teams, and I do have them against Arizona State, whose resume again doesn't really come close in my estimation, with 2 losses in a soft Big 12. So that's where I'm at.
Very good.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll talk again here before rivalry week, before it comes to an end, and definitely on Friday we'll do it again. I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, if you want to have me on anytime this week, I mean, like I'm working remote, so I'll be here. I'll be home and ready to jump
Maybe
on.
Kris and I will probably do a one-off or two here throughout the week. Maybe some quick hitters when we have thoughts. We're always thinking up something.
Yep.
So appreciate it, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you, Jack.
And my man KD, thank you so much for joining me. We always have a good time. He is I forgot to have the conversation. I wanted to have the conversation with him about his love for the Big Ten and kind of my thoughts on that love for the Big Ten. Matter of fact, maybe that's a one-off we'll do. I'm going to write that down. KD Big Ten. I just used to feel this affinity for the Big Ten, right? I used to Big Ten SEC matchups and stuff, and I'll still root for the Big Ten in a game like that. But I used to really actively root for the Big Ten conference to do well against, the ACC or the Pac-12. Because when I was a kid, when I was younger, those were my people, right? But as things started changing with Ohio State, maybe starting in the Tressel era, and Ohio State maybe started to, when Urban came in, and invest a little more and do a little recruiting better and change a little bit to be structured more like a Southern team. It seemed like a lot of the Big Ten teams realized that Ohio State was getting a little further away. Like the gap between Ohio State and the rest of the Big Ten was, and they didn't follow. They didn't follow the lead. They didn't try to get better. And Ohio State and Michigan forever have dominated the conference. I just feel like they have ridden off the coattails, cashed the checks, and not tried to invest in football. Their fan bases are nothing like Ohio State's. None of them at all. And I don't really want to root for you when you don't put your effort and you don't love football. Like they don't root for their own teams as hard as we root. I've talked to so many Indiana fans this week. They're just like, I mean, I watched the game and they're talking crap to me and they're not even really like fans like we are. Like they're nothing like us. So these fan bases are nothing like us. I really think that I relate much more to the Alabama and the Georgia and the Texas fan base and the Oklahoma fan base than I do any of the other Big Ten fan bases, except for maybe Nebraska. So like, I just don't have an affinity for them anymore. So Katie and I, we debate that all the time. And we got some super chats to get to. I do also want to say, boy, was I so wrong about this playoff, man. I don't want it to go to 14. It's going to go to 14. But I almost feel spoiled for the amount of fun that I've had this regular season, for the amount of good games that we have every Saturday. And I thought that this would ruin the regular season, this new playoff. I thought it would ruin my enjoyment of the regular season, and it has been amazing. But I think that Petiti and Sankey really need to address the auto bids in the seeding, because when we look at the seeding right now, let's say as Kris would have it, we'll go by his rankings. We're talking about Arizona State and who else? Arizona State and let's say SMU. Arizona State and SMU are going to both have a bye, right? Which means we're going to have these bang up games in the first round. And then as they advance, they're going to go to the second round. And then in the second round, we're going to have these games that are probably going to be a little more lopsided. The playoff is not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be like you play a little bit of an easier game, maybe if you're a big time team, and then it gets harder as you get closer to the championship. And it's going to go the opposite way because we're rewarding these conference champions when these conferences aren't created equal. I mean, it's just like I think we could pick 5 or 6 Big Ten teams that would win the Big 12, right? And I just don't like, I get that you want to entice them to win the conference championships, and that's cool. You should. However, I think you're sacrificing some of the playoff. I think this could be better if we really had the legit top 4 teams getting the bye weeks. And I think we need to see it play out before we ultimately judge totally. But that's the way I think it's going to play off. Of course, I was way wrong about this playoff, so I'm not going to jump all in and say I'm 100% right, because I was definitely wrong about that. Debo Ray, thank you so much. It is hate week. Forget scum. And Kris the GOAT. Oh, I'm sorry, bud. I should have read that when he was here. Kris the GOAT for that vid that's been playing for 2 days. Oh my gosh. It killed me when Snoop said, who y'all at? By the way, happy B-Day to my son. Happy B-Day to your son, Debo Ray. Kris put out a mix-up of Signetti after the game with, it was awesome. I will put it on, put the link to it on my page after here. But if you guys haven't seen it, check out Menace Twitter. It is so good. Blue Wolverine, thank you so much. Rivalry week. The game is next. The season has absolutely flown by. Gosh, hasn't it, guys? I mean, I know we say it every year, how fast it flies by, but, you know, this one in particular, I can't believe that we are here. This is it. And it kind of stings, but at the same time, the position that my team is versus the position that your team is, like, I feel like we still got a whole season to play, maybe. You know what I mean? You, not so much. But I do appreciate the super chat and all your support. You're a hell of a guy. Coach Zach, USMC vet, thank you so much for your service, my friend. Bucks by 50. Forget the team up north. I have no fear. Trey for 150. Mech gets over 100. And Day changes our narrative of the game. P.S. Pay your bets, Shane. Shane, are you listening? I don't know if he listens here, but Shane, if you're listening, pay your bets. What's wrong with you, man? Who doesn't pay their bets? That's horrific. In a public platform, no less. Unbelievable. Mika says, calling it now, we get Turbo and Sanders. That would be amazing to get 2 big flips like that. If you could add in Hill, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And more talks about Justin Hill. Small Town Collectibles says, Chuck, starting at 9:35 to get that extra 5 minutes of sleep. I see you. Now, there is a theory behind this, okay? The theory goes, if you don't start on the 10 or on the 30, right? So 9 or 9:30, you start 5 minutes after. So the people who usually tune in, you give them a little extra time to catch the start of the show because you want them all lived up. It's just something I read, and it does give me 5 minutes of sleep. So whatever. Jacob says, Juck, even as a Michigan fan, I love your content, buddy. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Your team sucks. Anyway, that'll do. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for rocking with me on a Monday morning. We're going to have a hell of a lot of fun this week. So check me out every morning at 9:30. And then I'm going to be doing several guest spots this week with other podcasts. And when I do that, I'll tweet that or put the notification on YouTube so you guys can come join me. And if that's with opposing fan bases and whatnot, hopefully get my back, because I run my trap a little bit sometimes. Anyway, that'll do me for. Appreciate you guys so much on a Monday. Have a great day. Juck on Bucks out. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck? Who is Juck?
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks?
Juck.
Juck
on Bucks.
My guy, Juck.
Juck on Bucks.
My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juck on Bucks.
Okay.
Juck is junk.
The Juckeyes.
Juckeye.
Juck on Bucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.